Hello everyone, this is Puka and welcome to another game I played on Pokemon TCG Online, PTCGO. And in this game, I've had requests lately by a lot of people to play the Raybor deck, Rayquaza, EX, and Emboar. So I figured I'd go ahead and make another video with it. I believe I was undefeated going into this game, got about 13 straight wins with this deck, so it's pretty powerful. It's basically like a Blastoise, Keldeo kind of a deck. Same idea, you get your stage 2 Pokemon out, then you can attach as many energy as you want. The attacker for this deck is Rayquaza EX, which has Dragon Burst, does 60 times the number of fire or lightning energy you discard. So we just powered up with a bunch of fire energy and then Dragon Burst to knock out things in one hit. That's the idea, and Emboar's Inferno Fandango allows us to do this. So we'll see what we can do here. Alright, so we're going to start off and bench both the Rayquaza and the Tepig here. I have a decent starting hand here, starting with the Tropical Beach. That's about as good as it gets, along with a Skyla and a Tepig on the bench already. Looks like we're going up against some kind of a Team Plasma deck. I'm going to Skyla here, and I go for a Level Ball. I may be paranoid, too used to the old days where if you only have one of your basic in play, they can just be Ketchered out, and then you lose. If they just keep knocking out your Tepigs, or used to be Squirtle. So I go ahead and search for another Tepig. I'm not sure if I needed to do that. Doesn't seem too likely that a Tepig gets knocked out in turn 1, especially with another bench Pokemon, Escape Rope. If they play Escape Rope, I would just push up the Rayquaza instead. So I'm not sure if I did the correct thing there, but oh well. And now we see the Frozen City. This is not good. Frozen City is probably this type of deck's worst enemy, right? Every time you attach an energy to a non-Team Plasma Pokemon, you have to put 2 damage counters on a Pokemon. And in this particular deck, I only played 2 stadiums. So I already played one, and there's my second one. I'm going to go ahead and put it down. Maybe I was better off saving it for a better time, but I would like to get Emboar out this turn, and if we can just kind of overpower my opponent with constant knockouts, maybe the damage to my own Pokemon won't make that big of a difference, but we'll see. So I'm going to go ahead and attach to the active Reshiram, and I'm going to have to Tropical Beach because, well, I don't have any supporters in my hand, so an Outrage right there would not have been particularly useful. I would have done 70 damage, but I don't think that's really worth it in this scenario. Also, I wanted to attach the energy after the Tropical Beach, because if I put another 20 on myself, I could have been in range for Thundurus to knock me out with Raid Knuckle, whereas right now they would have to do 80 damage, so no point in putting Reshiram in harm's way. We'll see what happens here, though. So we see an energy onto the Kyurem and the Plasma energy. Plasma is a weird deck after the rotation, or not rotation, the rule changes, where everyone thought this deck would just kind of die out, but it appears that it really hasn't. It's still very powerful. The deck is really strong, as we can see I'm under a lot of pressure right now. It did lose Pokemon Catcher. The flip to it really hurts, and the first turn rule really hurt it a lot as well, but seems to be pretty strong nonetheless. Alright, so looks like I got a pretty darn bad Juniper here. I mean, not bad, but I was hoping to get like a Rayquaza EX and then a superior energy retrieval. That would have allowed me to Dragon Burst the Kyurem for a knockout and really put lots of pressure back on my opponent. Now, I just have to retreat to this Rayquaza and pass. Kind of saying, oh, well, this is a dead turn for me. I'm going to Tropical Beach, refill my hand. We at least dropped a couple energy on the bench, Rayquaza EX, and we'll have to go from here. So my opponent going to decide, you know what, I don't have a good hand either. I'm going to Tropical Beach as well. And alright, let's go to war. We're both going to be powering up our attackers, and we'll see who comes out on top in this kind of a situation. At this point, the biggest thing I'm afraid of is Frozen City. If another one comes out, I'm going to be in major, major trouble. But if that doesn't come out, I think I'll be fine in this game. once we can Dragon Burst every turn with Rayquaza EX, we can kind of wipe out all the energy in play for our opponent's side, and it works out really well. You know, you can just kind of keep them off energy and Dragon Burst every turn until you win. So here, I did not draw a switch or an escape rope. Either one would have been really nice here. But it looks like I do have a superior energy retrieval, which I can go ahead and use that here. We'll discard Execute, and I can discard that Zekrom as well. I have that for the Empoleon matchup, since its second attack can knock out Empoleon in one hit, and has 130 HP, so very difficult for Empoleon to respond to that kind of a thing. So we're actually going to use Inferno Fandango to power up, put 3 energy on the Rayquaza, since it has a mighty 3 retreat cost, so that I can retreat and play an energy search here. And oh wow, there's no energy in the deck. Whoops. But a couple must be prized. And then we'll go ahead and attach as many energy as we can this turn before Frozen City comes out. And then Dragon Burst for 180, knocking out the Kyurem. We're tied at 5 prizes apiece. But the important thing there is we took out the Kyurem. So now, realistically, all my opponent can do is Raid Knuckle this turn, which would do like 60, or get another Kyurem into play to Frost Spear, in which case I would just knock that out immediately, and I would be fine with that. So the most likely thing that's going to happen here is the Raid Knuckle, and I would guess that's what we're going to see. We see a Chorus Machine. Gonna get that energy onto the Kyurem, and you know, there is a chance we could see a Frost Spear. I wouldn't mind that. Then I could just knock out the Kyurem. No harm, no foul. And then we see a Chorus after a Float Stone on the Deoxys. So yeah, we're just kind of at this point where the next couple turns are going to be huge. It's going to really come down to if I can keep powering up Rayquaza EX each turn. We have an escape rope here. This is an interesting thing. Now, I could promote Emboar since it has the Float Stone. That's option number 1. But then I could get hit by the Kyurem. If my opponent does play Virbank and Laser, that would be really bad, right? I would just lose my Emboar to a Frost Spear. Now, it doesn't seem too likely for that to happen, but it's almost like, is it worth risking that? I mean, I pretty much lose the game if that were to happen. So I'm going to decide to promote Tepig instead, and we'll just go with that. I can always just retreat Tepig for 2 energy, so not the biggest deal in the world with that one. So I get hit for 60, and another energy goes on to Kyurem, I believe. And so we'll go ahead and Propagation with Execute. This is one of the cards that's actually pretty important in this deck. I think you can go ahead and use it. And it makes your superior energy retrievals only have to discard 1 card plus Execute. So you have to discard a lot fewer resources every time. It's very nice. Also for Ultra Ball and Computer Search or Dowsing Machine, depending on your A-Spec. So Execute definitely comes in handy quite often. So we got the 2 energy onto Tepig and then 3 more onto the Rayquaza EX. I am concerned with running out of energy at this point, but we have Super Rod as well as 2 more superior energy retrievals, so not the biggest concern. We'll have to see. Now I do have this Super Rod. I'm going to go ahead and shuffle in 3 Fire, I guess, since I don't have any left in my deck. And then we'll go ahead and Dragon Burst. I guess we can Tool Scrapper with a Float Stone as well. Take away the free retreating on the Deoxys. And yes, Dragon Burst, 180, knock out the Thundurus EX. And now we have 2 Kyurems to deal with in these next couple turns. But we did enter our opponent down to a lower hand size. We also have the Rare Candy now for Emboar. That's really good. We can evolve that Tepig so that it's not picked off by a Frost Spear later. And, you know, it's just going to be a game of who runs out of resources first at this point. We do see the Tool Scrapper getting rid of that on my Emboar. That shouldn't be too big of a deal at this point, unless there's a Pokemon catcher or something. And my opponent gets the huge Silver Bangle. But wow, 4 ends in the discard pile. As long as I can get knockouts every turn here, I should be good now. I have the prize lead, and yeah, it just feels like I should be able to win at this point. But who knows? Crazy things can happen. I could really whiff on some things here. I'm trying to think of what my opponent could do to beat me at this point. And, oh, yep, that's one of them. Frozen City. That is the big card. Now that's going to make this a lot more interesting. Alright, so I take 2 damage every time I attach an energy to one of my Pokemon, since I don't have any Team Plasma Pokemon in my deck. All of my stadiums are in the discard pile, so this is going to be a very big problem at this point. I'll go ahead and Superior Energy Retrieval, getting rid of Execute and an N, and we'll go ahead and grab 4 energy from the discard pile, so we can attach the Lightning to the active Rayquaza EX, and then attach 3. And I may as well just power up Mewtwo at this point as well, since I could power him up for a big X ball. If I get hit, then I may not be able to attach a bunch of energy to my Rayquaza, so I may need to clean up with Mewtwo at this point, running kind of thin on attackers. And I don't believe I've seen my opponent's Ace Spec card, so I'm still going to try to play my hand down. Well, actually, I've seen a computer search, so there was really no point in playing that Ultra Ball there. Usually, it's just out of instinct. We get rid of cards in case our opponent plays an N, and we don't want to redraw those cards if my hand gets shuffled in. So it really didn't matter there, but we see the Silver Bangle on the Kyurem, and a Team Plasma Ball for an Absol. Now that Absol is actually huge. I have that Escape Rope in my hand, and if it weren't for that Absol, I would have been able to just Escape Rope and then X-Ball one of those Deoxys for the win. So very good by my opponent to get that Absol down on the bench. That's actually very, very bad for me. I would have been able to win right here if it weren't for that. But now I'm going to get hit by Kyurem with a Frost Spear for what looks like 90 damage. Ouch. And that means I cannot even attach an energy to the Rayquaza anymore because of Frozen City. If I attach a single energy, I just get knocked out because of Frozen City. So you can see just how important that card is against decks like Emboar, against decks like Blastoise. This is probably the card that keeps Team Plasma decks relevant. Frozen City is extremely powerful, and it's not until recently that we've seen it get a lot of play. So it's very interesting to see that. Now, that being said, we still have a very good shot of winning. I can just power up my Mewtwo at this point. So we're going to go ahead and Propagation. And this is going to be a strange plan, but I'm going to knock out my own Rayquaza EX. And this is only because I don't really have any attackers left that I can power up besides the Mewtwo. Right? This is my last attacker in the deck. I chose not to Super Rod in Zekrom or anything like that. So I am going to power up Mewtwo, knock out my own Rayquaza EX, put my opponent at 1 prize, and then power up my Mewtwo, play an N, put my opponent at 1 card, and then just basically say, if you don't draw a Prism Energy for your Deoxys this turn, I win. That's all there is to it. Now, I'll be able to really knock out everything else on the field. I can Escape Rope if Lugia comes out. So I'm basically just going to put the game on this, an N to 1, see if my opponent draws a Prism Energy or some way to attack with Deoxys. If not, I'm going to win the game. That's it. So we see the X-Ball knocking out the Kyurem, and Deoxys comes out. Uh-oh. It's going to come down to this. Oh, no. Off to the end of 1. Oh, there's the Prism Energy and the Helix Force. So that is a brutal loss for our hero, Raybor. That was a very close game, but Frozen City definitely was the MVP for my opponent. Very, very close game, but in the end we were just that 1 turn short. If that Prism Energy weren't there, then I believe we would have won. But that's how the game goes sometimes. It is card games, so it depends on what cards you draw sometimes. And this time we were on the losing end. But I hope you guys enjoyed. This was a fun game. Came out on the losing end, but still fun, still interesting. So I will have some more videos for you guys soon. This is Puka from the Top Cut, and I will see you guys next time.